really been a tremendous resource during this pandemic. They've stepped up and hosted the UCSF COVID-19 Equity Project, which, by the way, UCSF Fresno is another gem within our district. But I digress. And FIRM is also now stepping up to serve as a site for vaccinating our farm workers and small farmers. So to them, we say a great thank you. And it goes without saying that these essential workers, our farmers and our farm workers especially, we rely on to keep our families fed, have been critical, absolutely critical. They have kept not only the city afloat during these trying times, but really our communities all across California and the nation, if I might add. I very much appreciate the governor's relentless efforts on vaccine distribution and the tireless work of his administration over this last year in meeting the moment and keeping our communities safe. I'd also like to acknowledge my own representatives that represent the district as well at the state level, Dr. Arambula and Senator Hurtado, and for working with the administration to deliver for Fresno County. We look forward to even more collaboration and the increases in vaccine supplies that we'll see as soon as next week, and even more so in the coming months. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you the Assembly Member from the 32nd District, Rudy Salas.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Assemblymember Rudy Salas. I represent the southern end of the Central Valley out in Kern and Kings County. I just want to begin by saying thank you to the real heroes today, our farm workers and food workers who are on the front lines working day in and day out through the pandemic, through wildfires, during incredibly difficult work in the most difficult of conditions, to put food on our tables, to make sure that the rest of us can eat, and it's what we depend on for our families. Their hard work, dedication, and sacrifice is a reason that we're able to reliably feed our families and loved ones. And we owe the same thing to them. I appreciate the governor and my colleagues for taking action. Earlier this week, we voted on a $7.6 billion COVID relief package. And I'm glad that the governor is once again visiting the Central Valley to show that we're not being left behind. So I do want to say thank you. Appreciate George Lopez being here too, getting out the message. But we know we can't do this alone. It's not just elected officials in the Capitol, but it's going to take every single one of us coming together to get past this pandemic. And that's why we need the help of our community-based organizations. We need word to word, person to person, just people talking about, hey, it's safe. This is something we need to do if we care about our families, we care about our community. We need to do this for each other. And so I'm really glad that today's announcement is an extension of that promise to our food and ag workers, that we're going to make sure that you're safe, that we're going to bring more vaccines, and that we need to make sure that we get people vaccinated. And then if you let me, lo más para decir unas palabras en español, por favor. Lo más gracias al gobernador para venir al Valle Central otra vez y que va a venir, pues viene con noticias gran, que nosotros vamos a tener los vacunas para todos los trabajadores del campo, pero también que trabajen en el empaques también. Y con eso, lo más quiero decir gracias a ustedes por todo su trabajo que hacen para nosotros y nosotros familias. And with that, I'd like to invite the vice chair of the Latino caucus up in the Capitol, and that is my good friend, Robert Rivas.
Yeah, so good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Rivas, I represent the 30th Assembly District, Chair of Assembly Agriculture, and Vice Chair of the California Latino Legislative Caucus. And on behalf of our caucus, I want to thank our governor for inviting all of us here today. I want to thank the frontline healthcare staff who's here on site. We want to thank them for all the work that they're doing to ensure that we're vaccinating our most vulnerable, our farm workers, and that we're keeping them safe. This past year has been incredibly challenging for our country. It's been incredibly challenging for our state. This pandemic has taken a toll on everybody, from frontline essential workers to small business owners, parents, teachers, students. And this week it was well reported that our state here in California, we've hit 50,000 deaths related to this pandemic. 50,000. And every one of those lost lives was someone with a family and with friends. Family and friends who that cared about them, that loved them. And those losses have fallen disproportionately on our state's Latino, Black, and Native American our residents. And look, in the modern history of California, no governor has faced a crisis like this one. Unexpected, statewide, affecting every Californian, putting unprecedented strain on our healthcare system, and lasting now for over a year. In other states, you have some governors that haven't acknowledged the science of COVID-19, have stepped back from the hard work of leadership. Ours did not. And Governor Newsom has led with an unrelenting focus on those groups most affected by this virus, and time after time he stood up for the most vulnerable here in California. And I'm particularly grateful for the way that the governor has protected our farm workers. And Governor, I can tell you that in farm worker regions in this state, those communities, your support has saved lives. And as we have seen just today here on this site, this effort will continue to save lives. And clearly, we have work ahead of us to get everyone vaccinated, as was mentioned by Assemblymember Salas, to educate all of our farm workers, all of our residents in this state, the benefits of being vaccinated. But it's going to take a lot of work to get California back to normal. But the end of this dark period, in my opinion, is finally in sight. And so I am grateful for our governor, for his leadership, and to everyone here, my colleagues at the state level, the local level, for all of this work, incredibly important work. But let's keep it up. And again, appreciate the invitation to be here, and want to introduce and welcome this region's assembly member and my friend and colleague, Assemblymember Joaquin Arambula.
So what an honor to be here. It was just actually a few short weeks ago that we had the governor come. And if you remember, we had Maria Suarez, an 85-year-old lady who was our 5 millionth person who we vaccinated as a state. And yet here we are just a few short weeks later back in Fresno, where you're paying attention to communities who need your attention right now. I am thankful and grateful, Governor, for your continued and persistent attention to the central San Joaquin Valley. I do want to give you, if I can, a little bit of a report what's been going on the last few weeks, particularly here in Fresno County. Because you have allocated more resources towards Fresno County, we have been administering more vaccines to our farm working communities. As an example, I have partnered with St. Agnes Medical Center, Cultiva la Salud, Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability, the County Department of Public Health, and Fresno State's Mobile Nursing Unit to help to administer over 2,500 vaccines to our farm working communities. In cities like Orange Cove, in cities like Biola, in cities like Cantua Creek and Lanier, cities that are so rural and far away from Fresno that it's difficult for them to come get the needed care that we have been able to administer. But it's those partnerships which are so crucial, which are so critical, those CBOs who are doing the hard work, who are organizing and knocking on doors and being trusted messengers that I hope we can uplift. It is those nursing students who are out there on the front lines administering those vaccines that are allowing us to start having hope. and it's hope that I want to talk about today. Because over the last 2 weeks, if you're here in Fresno County, you've started to see our almond trees start blossoming. And for a lot of us who have gone through a long winter, it's those blossoms that start to give us hope. And what we're seeing with the administration of this vaccine is our community starting to have hope again. That we can put this pandemic behind us, that we can end this pandemic together. But it is through these partnerships, it is through your attention, and it is through your continued commitment to the Valley that we have that hope. So it is with a deep sense of gratitude, appreciation, and feeling blessed here in the Central Valley that I wanted to welcome you back and make sure that you felt it from all of us here about your continued attention and how important it is to us. With that, I'd like to invite my colleague and senator from the 14th District, Melissa Hurtado, to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. I want to start off by thanking the governor for once again coming down to the Central Valley, here to Fresno. I got the first opportunity to work with the governor 2 years ago as we were running for office, both at the same time. And the first thing that really struck me about the governor is how attentive he is to people. How willing he is to go out there and speak to members of the community, to listen, to take those ideas and just run with them. And I know that here in the Valley, everyone that you see here today, we've been bugging him quite a bit. But he's been listening and he's been taking action. And he's faced circumstances unlike anybody else. This is a very unique time that we're all facing. And as much as I'd like to think that this pandemic is near over, the reality is that climate change, something that the governor has been talking a lot about, is going to bring new challenges. And, within that is healthcare challenges. But here in the Central Valley, we know that that's something that's not, it's a challenge we've faced for quite some time. I know my good colleague from the Southern Central Valley, Assemblymember Salas, has been a big advocate for valley fever, which is also very deadly, and it's spreading even more and more. This is the future under a, globe that is changing. The climate is changing. And so we need to adapt to those new and challenging circumstances. And I'm just excited and glad that we have someone like Governor Newsom that listens to people, that is not afraid to go out there and talk to members of the community to get ideas and solutions. He's very innovative. He knows how to bring people together, and we have to do this all together, because we will only overcome climate change uniting around these issues that we're just going to be long facing into the near future. So, not trying to be Debbie Downer today, but that's the reality, and we will only overcome these challenges if we work together, because it never helps to point fingers at one another. And we're so fortunate that we have great leaders here in the Central Valley, and that we have Governor Newsom leading the state, because I know that things are going to turn out positive. So thank you once again, Governor, for coming on out. I love it, and I'll continue to bug, as I'm sure my good friends over here as well will continue to bug you to come down, and we love it. We want to have you here more. So thank you, everybody. And up next is my other good friend and colleague, Senator Caballero.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ana Caballero. I'm the senator for the 12th Senate District, which includes the Salinas Valley, San Benito County, Merced County, and then the rural agricultural portions of Stanislaus County, Madera County, and Fresno County. And I tell you all of that because the principal part of the economy of this entire region is agriculture. And it is a tremendous, powerful engine that drives our local economies. But more importantly, it is the engine that feeds the country. So you went to the store and there was no toilet paper, and you went to the store and there was no paper towels, and you went to the store and there was no hand sanitizer. But when you went to the store, there was food, and there was fresh food, and there was produce from this region that kept everybody fed during one of the worst, not only economic calamities this country has seen, but disease-wise, the worst pandemic that this country has ever seen. But the reason that we were able to produce and to make sure that there was food on the table is that farm workers were determined to be essential workers, as were the farmers themselves. And they stepped up to the plate. They went to work every day, despite the fact that they had fears and concerns, and despite the fact that we didn't have a lot of information at the very beginning as to how to keep yourself safe. Was it on doorknobs? Was it in the air? Was the virus something that you could just pass in a handshake or a cough? We just didn't know. And so now, hindsight being what it is, what we know is that farm workers were devastated because some of their work conditions and some of their housing conditions and some of their living conditions meant that they were the most at risk. And so they've paid the price in illness and in death higher than anyone else. But that's the reality on the street. But then what I also have to add my thanks to the governor, because in this pandemic, all of us, and you probably have almost 80-90% of the valley here represented today, all of us immediately went to the governor's office and said, look, we're going to need some help. And we're going to need PPE. We're going to need medical resources because they're lacking in rural California, transportation resources being what they are. It's hard to get in and to get an appointment. And so it took a marshaling of resources in order for us to be able to handle the situation and to feel like there was help on the way and that there was hope around the corner. And I think my good friend, Dr. Arambula, said it well, is that what we were all looking for was hope. We were looking for the light at the end of the tunnel. We were looking for the opportunity to be able to go back to the community and to say, look, here are resources. Here are what we need in order to be able to keep ourselves safe. And my good friend from Bakersfield talked about the package of economic relief and stimulus that we just got through passing. If you look at that package, it is tremendously responsive to the issues we've been talking about. There's housing for the harvest, and there's wage replacement opportunities there. There is money for undocumented workers that have been working but are still poor. There are all kinds of relief for the families in our communities, and that wouldn't have happened but for the governor listening, for his responding to the issues that we were concerned about, and offering a way to be able to make it happen. So we're here today in support, but we're also here to tell our families, help is on the way. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together at a time when there's a lot of conflict in the air and conflict in the world, conflict over whether this was even a real virus. We're here to say there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to get through this, and these vaccines are the hope that we have for the community. And I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to bring additional vaccines specifically for farm workers and for farmers, because the season's getting ready to start up again, and we need them to feel safe. We need them to feel protected and to know that we care about them. So thank you, Governor. On behalf of all of us, we see us as a team, and we want to make sure that you come down here as many times as possible. We're always happy to see you, and it's the hope that we hope that we're expressing to the community that we're here, and we're going to make sure we get the vaccines that they need. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Camila Chavez, who's the Executive Director of the Lourdes Huerta Foundation.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. I want to thank the governor for being here today to meet with the Central Valley leaders. The Dolores Huerta Foundation is partnering through the California COVID-19 Community Health Project to directly reach over 175,000 people in Kern, Tulare, and Fresno counties. Our outreach workers hit the streets last weekend. They hit the streets in Kern County to distribute PPE and resources that people so desperately need: testing, rental assistance, utility assistance, and information on workers' rights. Most important, we are promoting the vaccine. The Dolores Huerta Foundation and multiple grassroots organizations are looking forward to partnering with the state in hosting vaccination sites, specifically allocating vaccines for farm workers. Only by partnering with community-based organizations will we ensure that those most impacted by this crisis will be reached by trusted messengers. I have the pleasure of introducing a longtime supporter of the farm workers movement. He is a comedian, actor, activist, George Lopez.
Thank you, everybody. I have spent quite a bit of time out here, so I understand how important everybody who works in this area is, all the farm workers and all the people who get up every day and go to work with just a little bit of practically no attention. But they are very important to the state, they're very important to the country. And if you think about that, everything that we eat, they touch first. So when you think about whether you're a vegan or a vegetarian, you can't be without the people of the Central Valley. And I say, if you work in putting food on the table, then you belong with your place at that table. So it gives me a great honor to introduce a friend of mine, Governor of the great state of California, Gavin Newsom.
Thank you, George. And it's a real honor to have George with us, and I'll brag on him just in a moment, but I also want to just acknowledge all the incredible elected officials, local officials, as well as state officials that are here today. And I'm grateful because they get it, and more importantly, they're getting things done. You know, we are in a house of worship. We often talk places like this about faith and works. As we pray, we need to move our feet. These folks are moving their feet every single day, organizing communities, large and small, meeting people where they are, and implementing and applying the principles that unite us as Californians, and that's around our values of equity. And it's a spirit that brings us here back to the Central Valley today. And I say back because on Monday I began my week in Arvin in Kern County. I was up in Madera. We made commitments to this valley on Monday, saying we're going to bring an additional 34,000 doses to this valley by reprioritizing them from other parts of the state and bringing them here. And we've done exactly that. On Monday, we said we were going to set up 11 sites like this over the course of the week, and we've done just that. On Monday, in Arvin, we announced that we were going to increase the supply of available vaccines above and beyond the 34,000 by 58% week over week here in the Central Valley, and we've done just that. And I can assure you, we recognize the inadequacy nonetheless of these efforts. We have more work to do, and we are committed, not just interested, committed in stepping up our efforts and significantly increasing supply and increasing our outreach to communities all across this region. And when I say outreach, we recognize that we can't do it alone. Not just elected officials, we need partners like FIRM. What is unique and special about this place is they're one of 337 CBOs that the state of California now has formally engaged in to provide in-language services and provide that trusted messenger engagement that allows folks to do things that the state itself and elected officials could never do. And that is provide that peer-to-peer touch, to be able to go out, bend down on one knee, lift other folks up, and encourage them by educating folks that may be a little reticent, may be a little hesitant to get the vaccines, around how these vaccines will save your life and how these vaccines are part of our effort to completely turn the page on this pandemic and get it behind us. You know, Dr. Rumbola talked about that 5 millionth dose of vaccine that was provided just a few weeks ago. It is remarkable to just think just a few weeks ago, we were at 5 million doses of vaccines administered. Today, we announced that we're at 8,240,000, more than 6 nations in the world, passing countries like Israel. California has significantly stepped up its weekly administration of doses. In fact, the only constraint now is supply. We are administering more vaccines now formally than we are receiving from the federal government. It's not an indictment. It's all now about manufactured supply. It's the only constraint in terms of our capacity to do more and better. About 1.4 million vaccines are now being administered on a weekly basis. We've designed a system, and it includes this location here, where we can administer some 2.7 million doses on a weekly basis. The ultimate goal, to get to about 4 million doses on a weekly basis. Here's the good news. The allocations are starting to increase. We now have a 3-week window into the future, better predictability, better transparency and understanding of what will be available, not just this coming week, but over the next few weeks. We'll go from 1.46 million doses that we'll receive by the end of this week. Later today, we'll have 1.58 million. Next week, we'll go up to 1.63 million the week following. New doses are arriving, assuming the emergency use authorization of the J&J vaccine. We'll now have 3 vaccines, the Moderna, the Pfizer that's being administered here today, and the single-dose J&J. We anticipate receiving 380,300 doses of the J&J vaccine next week, and predictably over the next 3 weeks. That single dose provides opportunities to bring those doses and vaccines to where people are, because those doses don't require the storage that the Moderna and Pfizer doses require. And again, they're just a single dose. So now we'll have 3, and we'll see that manufactured supply go north of 380,000 very confidently. End of March, we'll see those begin to significantly increase. Look, it was mentioned by some of the members and the senators, and I appreciate all the spirit of optimism, and there should be. There is light, not light, there's bright light at the end of the tunnel. I'll just punctuate this and close. It's remarkable. 1 month ago today, we reported 17,000 cases of COVID. Today, 5,400. 17,000 to a little over 5,000. 1 month ago today, we had a 7.9% positivity rate. Today, the positivity rate is down to 2.7%, which is remarkable when you consider we were north of 14% 6 weeks ago. You know, it was 6 weeks ago that we were going all across the country asking for mutual aid to get more, dare I say this, body bags. It was noted, and I appreciate the comment, of how deadly this disease is. And we're not immune to that. Now, on a per capita basis, California has been much better off. I mean, just put it in perspective, 130 deaths per every 100,000 population. New York's at 261 per 100,000. And I say that for no other reason to say we have been the beneficiary of their hard work, of your hard work, of the non-pharmaceutical interventions that save lives. In the absence of a vaccine, wearing your mask is an imperative at this moment as we transition. But we are transitioning. More and more 65 and older getting vaccinated. More and more of our friends and family members in our skilled nursing facilities, our assisted living facilities, our congregate care facilities. We are protecting more, and we're providing more support, but nothing more essential. And again, let me end as I began, than where we are here in the Central Valley. George made the point. Let us never take for granted our farm workers, our ag workers. Let us never take for granted these food processing plants and all of those individuals that make it possible to lay claim to our status as a breadbasket to the world, not just the United States. Let us never take for granted what Senator Caballero was just saying about what remains present ubiquitously at the grocery store and elsewhere, and that's the abundance that is choice, that is so unique to this state and our nation, but it's because of those farm workers. And George and I had a privilege just a moment ago to meet a young woman, regardless of time of life, but her state of mind, and she said to both George and I, in Spanish, George translating it kindly, talked about the fact that she feels a sense of dignity and pride because she's quote-unquote essential. I love that someone who's been out there feeling lost and forgotten is now here with pride because she is an essential worker, and she got ahead of the line because she deserved it and she earned it. And so that's the spirit that brings me back to the Valley just twice this week and will bring me back over and over and over again. It's the spirit of optimism and hope, but also hard-headed pragmatism, that we are not where we will be in a number of months, but we are getting closer every single hour of every single day because of remarkable partners like FIRM and incredible leaders like those that you just heard from. So I'm here enthusiastically, but soberly, mindful of what is in front of us, hopeful nonetheless by what is taking shape. And every day we are doing better, a little bit better, on the issue of equity, and recognize we have a long way to go, so much more work to do to truly be held to account to a higher level of performance, particularly for our Latino community and our African American community here in this state. Again, thank you to credible elected officials, and what a treat George Lopez decides to take his time, drive all the way up here today to spend time with each and every one of you because he values everyone in this community, and I'm incredibly gratified, humbled by his presence as well here today. With that, all of us are available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Governor. Jim Jacobs here with GV Wire. Thanks for taking our questions here in the Central Valley. I had a question about the TPA with Blue Shield of California. I know that they've taken effect. We've had a really difficult time getting information from them. I've emailed them 3 times myself, asking them about wave 1 potentially, what we're in here in the Central Valley. They've redirected me to the CDPH every time, and I have not received response from them. What are you going to do to make them more transparent, more open with what they're doing? They don't have a dashboard like the state does. They don't have any way of communicating with us. Can they provide updates to us on a weekly basis in some sort of a virtual press conference or with you? What can you do to help them expand?
Things begin to be fully implemented starting on Monday. So we just announced this transition. So we're in the midst of the transition. So your question is perfectly understandable and rational and is recognized not only here in the Valley, but all across the state. So we're moving from a transition, 58 solutions, 1,100 providers under those 58 counties. Lack of transparency, I assure you, in each and every case, in each and every county, everyone operating a little bit differently. The whole idea of getting everyone on a single platform is more transparency, more accountability, more ability to answer your question by not only looking at a dashboard, but understanding what those numbers mean, what they don't mean. Provider payments, incentives in terms of performance, redirecting allocations that are not getting to people's arms, that are still in freezers, and data analytics that will allow us a real-time information gathering. So next week, that process begins at a whole new scale.
Corin Hoggard from ABC 30. I wanted to check back in on 2 things we discussed 16 days ago.
Yeah.
One is just the latest on the mass vaccination center possibly coming here. You said last time that the discussions with the Biden administration were pretty far along, so I wanted an update on that. And the other was the 3-week allocation planning that counties, you said, would be able to do. I know that the federal government is now giving the state 3 weeks notice, but the counties still aren't receiving that. So what's the latest?
So next week, the counties will start getting their 3-week window, specifically March 1st. And as it relates to the mass vaccination site, we have, as you know well, 2 sites, one in Oakland, one in Southern California, at Cal State LA. What's remarkable about those sites, and by the way, We announced yesterday we're opening up both of those sites at scale with prioritization to our educators so we can get our kids safely back into school. We must get our kids safely back in school. We're setting aside multiple days to do just that at those two sites. But what's important about those two sites is they also have roving components. They have mobile components that reach out in diverse communities, including Ramona Gardens. Predominantly, I was just down there in LA, predominantly a Latino public housing site. Again, we're going on site, knocking on doors, truly trying to advance the cause of equity in a more meaningful way. And so that's a component of those two sites. Now, here's what happened, full disclosure. The state of California was the beneficiary of the first two federal sites. Other states were not as pleased as we all were about being the first and having not one but two large-scale sites. It's put a lot of pressure on the new administration to do the same in every other state in the country. And so they're just getting started. And so we are indeed committed to getting a third site, but I didn't wait for that. That's why I came back Monday to announce the 34,000 doses. That's why I came back Monday to announce the 58% increase, 58%, not the modest increase we're seeing over the next few weeks, but the 58% increase, and to announce 11 of these OptumServe sites that we got up in 4 days. And so that's my commitment to the Valley. Until that larger site comes, will be additive, but really the backbone, the architecture of our vaccination efforts will be realized at locations more like this.
Thaddeus Bill, President B. Governor, what we're talking about today sounds a lot like mostly just word of mouth. Is there anything more you can do to combat mistrust or misinformation about the vaccine besides just word of mouth?
Yeah, look, I mean, we put up $52.7 million. It's not insignificant. $53 million, and we partnered with community-based organizations like this. And that's exactly what we're doing. This, by the way, that's an announcement. 337 community-based organizations now as part of this public-private partnership. I say public-private because of their leadership, the Assembly and the Senate. They provided over $23 million, and then we went out and re-raised $29 million, 29.4 to be exact. 23.3, 29.4, $52.7 million. And this is one of those CBOs that we're partnering with to do exactly what needs to be done to address the issue of misinformation and lack of trust and confidence in not only the safety but the efficacy of these vaccinations. So that's our approach, and it's truly culturally competent in language, bottom up, not top down. And to the extent we have to build on that and do more, we are committed in partnership to build on that and do more.
Governor David Talbot, GV Wire, thank you so much for taking our questions. The different school districts that cover Fresno have different policies when it comes to in-person instruction. Clovis Unified has already have students back in campus. Fresno Unified has not for the general school population. And they have a contract with the union that will be until the orange tier comes to Fresno County that can happen. So I'm wondering, is there any talk of state intervention possibly requiring in-person instruction for districts like Fresno that have these issues with the union?
Yeah, we've been working with the legislature. We're literally in the final stages of our negotiations. I hope it's the final stages of our negotiation. We've been at this since December. What's included in that is $6.6 billion to address the issue of learning loss and to address the associated costs to safely reopen, to provide supports to consider the extension of the school year, school day, to provide wellness, to provide the kind of support on capital improvements for ventilation, for distancing. We've provided 3 months of free PPE. We have contracts on testing, and we put out a dashboard for safely reopening our schools. And we are looking forward with the expedited vaccinations. And by the way, we're one of the first states in America to prioritize our teachers and our cafeteria workers, bus drivers and food workers, our educators, to prioritize them in terms of vaccine allocation. With all of that, I would hope and expect, this is my opinion, that we will reopen for in-person instruction, TK to 2 and 3 to 6 as a top priority. With respect, our kids can't wait. They can't afford another day, another week, another month without the socio-emotional benefits of being safely in school and in person. We can get this done, and so that's what we're working on with the legislature, and I'm eager to see that happen. I've frankly been a little insistent on seeing that happen, and so the answer to your question is we are working through that, and hopefully there'll be some daylight on those efforts as early as the beginning of next week.
Hi, Governor. This is Marie Edinger with Fox 26 News. You mentioned that the vaccines that are coming to the Central Valley are from a redistribution plan rather than the state actually getting more doses. And as you know, Fresno County was altogether paused for its max vaccination sites of its first doses. I'm wondering what made you decide to take on that redistribution plan, and if bringing doses here is going to negatively impact other communities since we aren't getting extra doses.
Yeah, so it was part of the TPA, it was part of the agreement with Blue Shield. We actually began to loosen the allocation, 70% statewide going to people 65 and over, 30% to food and ag workers and other essential workers. You're the beneficiary of a larger portion of the population falling into that segment. And that's why it's not one time. The announcement was 58% increase ongoing, not 5%, not 8%, 58% ongoing as a baseline. In addition to that, we did do one-time 34,000 because respectfully, one of our providers was not administering the vaccines quickly enough. And yes, forgive me, we decided to send them to the Valley because you deserve them.
Hi, Governor. This is Jocelyn with CBS 47. Two quick things. The first thing, Fresno County had an allocation of about 21,000 doses last week. When you talk about a 58% increase, is that a 58% increase to that allocation? And the second thing, you talk about food and ag workers and really equity. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about more on down the line when it comes to minorities who live in multi-generational households who have been heavily impacted by COVID-19, who might be in their 40s, 50s, 30s, really, who have these underlying health conditions and live in these close quarter homes. If you could talk a little bit about them and reaching those populations as well with vaccinations down the line.
I appreciate both components of your question. Let me just take the first. 58% is average for the entire valley. That includes many parts of the valley. Let me be more specific. When we're in Arvin, we talked about Kern County's allocation being closer to 78%. Certain parts of the valley doing a little bit better than other parts of the valley. So we're working through the details, and I'll provide you a map of the specifics. But let me give you the valley's specific. 44,000 a week ago, 69,000 this week. That's the percentage increase in the valley to local health authorities, meaning there's additional private, there's additional pharmacy and additional community clinic allocations that are not part of that. That's the baseline. 44,000 went to 69,000 as it relates to King and Tulare and here Stanislaus and other parts of the valley, including Fresno. So that's encouraging. That's the baseline. Now, as it relates to your subsequent question, which is the right question, mixed status families, all those generational challenges and opportunities, I love that it was mentioned just a moment ago, that $7.6 billion effort we just announced a few days ago, because in that includes, yes, thank you, Senator, that Housing to Harvest program. That's $24 million we just approved. They led, we just approved to go into this community and farm worker communities all up and down the state for financial assistance, wraparound assistance, and housing assistance, quarantine and isolation. And that's to help those families, particularly may have been exposed or have contracted this disease. Now, as it relates to additional supports, it was mentioned, and I love this, and by the way, I'm proud of this. And I know not everyone agrees, but regardless of your immigration status, folks were left out of the federal supports. The state of California was the first state a year ago to direct assistance, and we followed it up again with what we call the Golden State stimulus. 5.7 million Californians, 5.7 million getting $600 checks. And that includes I-10 workers. And we're proud of that. It's the right thing to do. These folks have had our back, not complaining, and they've been there for us every single day. And many are in that mixed status family, and those families will ultimately be the beneficiaries, not just those individuals, those households will be the beneficiaries. Now, as it relates to underlying conditions, we put out guidelines a week ago related to a March 15th deadline to include IDD and other comorbidities, cancer, and other things, regardless of age 16 to 64. That's specific to your question about a 4-year-old that may be in that category. I'm looking to update that as early as Tuesday or Wednesday preview next week. I'm not sure we want to wait till March 15th. And the reason we're feeling we can do that is we have a preview into increased allocations, particularly
AC24, your team tells me this will be the last question. You mentioned...
And there are 9 other people here that can answer questions.
Your team tells... you mentioned that 380,000 of the J&J vaccine could come to the state next week. Because it's a single-dose vaccine, will that be prioritized for certain groups that would benefit from a single-dose vaccine just because of timing and whatnot? And will that 380,000 be consistent?
Yeah, no, so the 3-week preview that we were given from the Biden administration, 380,300 next week, week after, and the week after. So it's consistent based on that 3-week window. By the way, they update that 3-week every week, so those numbers are subject to change. But it's encouraging, and that single dose will be allocated, and we'll go through the process with the third-party agreement in partnership with counties, and we will figure out where to land in terms of the distribution. But I want to just make this point because I think this is a question you're going to be asking all of us very soon. Some people prefer Pfizer. Some people prefer Moderna. Some people say, well, J&J is a single dose, but its efficacy is a little different than Moderna and Pfizer. Why am I getting that single shot? Why don't I get this other shot? Here's what I say. Take the shot when it's your turn. Get any of these shots. It's going to save your lives. The J&J, one single shot. They've actually done studies as it relates to the South African variant and its efficacy, but as it relates to hospitalizations, severe symptoms, and ICUs, it's as safe, and you heard Dr. Fauci this morning say, as the other 3. And so I just encourage people to take what they can get so we can get closer to the day when we're at herd immunity and we're starting to reopen. And I'll just close on this. We are starting to reopen. Stay-at-home order was lifted. Schools are going back into session. Businesses are starting to open up, not just outdoors. We had 5 counties move from purple to red. 8, we project, could be a little more than that. Next Tuesday, we'll move into red. More still the week after. This is happening very, very quickly. It's a point of real optimism. So I love what the doctor said. It's winter and fall, we always have spring. And you're seeing spring and the blossoms, the almond trees here in the valley. It's symbol. It's also substance. We really are seeing that bright light at the end of the tunnel because of all of your hard work, because of millions of Californians that met the moment and helped get us to this point. And so I thank each and every one of them. I thank all the elected officials here, and we're blessed, again, to have George Lopez in our presence back as he's been thousands of times in the Central Valley. Take care, everybody. Thank you.